lot of people have this assumption that all artists are good at drawing. I mean, I go through phases where I'll draw for a while, then I'll stop for, a few years. The truth is, I'm not that great at drawing things. For the best part of the last decade, I've mostly just finger painted animals using acrylics on canvas. That's been my go-to art style and subject matter. But lately, I don't know, I've been yearning for something new. I'm kind of entering a new phase of my creative journey. So in my last video, I talked about how my battle with cancer this year has kind of made me think a lot about my past, my present, and my future. And part of my future is becoming a better portrait artist. I want to practice creating portraits both in charcoal drawing and oil paints, but not just from a picture, in real life. I want to be able to paint or draw well from a live model. So I'm not entirely new to drawing portraits. Back in 2007, I used to have this idea in my mind that, I can't draw people, until I started to ask myself, how do I know that? I've never really even tried. So I started drawing celebrities and movie characters. But before I show you some of those, I was going through my portfolio and I actually found this one portrait that's even older. I did this back in high school, I think, so like 2003 maybe. It's of the singer-songwriter Jewel. So this is not a great picture, but I'm just showing you this because I would say this is, skill-wise, this is where I started. And it's not terrible for one of my first ever portrait drawings. But if you're new to drawing, don't worry, we're all bad at the beginning. So I guess it's not that I believed I couldn't do it, but maybe I was just being lazy and afraid of the countless hours of practice I knew it was going to take to get good. So anyway, in 2007, I started to draw with no real direction or training or anything guiding me on how to do it, other than just, the desire to prove myself wrong, that yes, I can draw people. So my first attempt was of Jake Gyllenhaal. Not bad for a first try, and it does capture the likeness, but definitely lacking any real technique. Same goes for the next few that I did, like Pete Wentz, Angelina Jolie, and a few others. They were all on the same level of skill, I would say. None of them are really better or worse than the next. But I did keep pushing myself to draw more. So every day when I got home from work, I would draw one portrait start to finish. I did this for about a month, and it turns out I could draw people. I just got better and better as the month progressed, and I was able to do a drawing like this in about 2 to 3 hours. So I used a standard set of graphite drawing pencils, nothing fancy. I actually still have it. It's the first set that I've ever owned in my life. But yeah, I used my fingers and sometimes some paper towel just to smudge the graphite on the paper, and then just a regular old white eraser. So about a dozen drawings in, I noticed a significant shift in my skills. It's like I just leveled up one day and suddenly they started turning out far better. I started selecting characters from movies that I liked, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet from Titanic, Mulder and Scully from The X-Files, Rogue and Wolverine from X-Men, The Terminator, Edward Scissorhands, Jake and Innes from Brokeback Mountain. And I was beginning to realize that sometimes less detail is better. I didn't really understand what I was learning through all of this practice, but now in hindsight, I kind of am understanding that I was learning how the light falls on the face, the shapes of the shadows, proportions of the face. I noticed actually after drawing Johnny Depp in 4 different characters from various movies, I started to notice that regardless of the character I was drawing, which are very different looking characters, the shape of the shadows on his face were the same in each picture. And as I was drawing them, I was like, it was almost muscle memory. It's like, oh, I've drawn this shape before. So when I started this endeavor, I had the most basic understanding of how to find the proportions of a face by just drawing like an oval shape, the center line, the eye line, the nose, the lip. All of this was just a guess. I was just eyeballing it from looking at the picture. That's how I did all of these old drawings. And I kind of formed my own techniques along the way. These are not the greatest drawings by any means, but they did gradually get better and better. But then I just kind of stopped drawing. I'm not really sure why. I think at the time I was living in a bachelor apartment, and it was pretty far from the job that I had, and there was a point where I actually had 2 jobs. So maybe I just lacked the time. Maybe I just, got out of it, and then day after day went by where I wasn't drawing, and then eventually I just wasn't drawing at all anymore. But anyway, a couple of years later, 2009, and then again in 2010, I drew a couple more, but that was it. I guess I just wanted to know if I had lost my learned skills from years ago. I hadn't, but I wasn't very motivated to draw more. Then again, in 2015, I did a few more, but they were horror movie characters, and it would seem my skills hadn't faded away. In fact, I think they got better somehow. Maybe because I was painting more, I don't know. But I did, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Joker, and some others. But I think Frankenstein's monster is my best and favorite one that I did. Compared to Jewel from 12 years prior, it's far better. But again, I stopped after about half a dozen drawings. Fast forward to 2024, today. I'm now trying to learn some actual techniques, going back to the basics, learning the fundamentals. I understand there are so many various techniques out there that are used by many artists, old and new, and I've come to realize a few things either in my research, my studying, or even just what I've learned over the years of my own portrait drawing journey. So 1, everybody has the right way to draw a portrait, or at least the best way in their opinion. Maybe this is just a product of the internet and everyone is fighting for everyone's attention, so they kind of have to make these claims so that people click on their videos. But if everyone's way is the best way, which one is actually best? My point being, there are many right ways to do it. The second thing is detail is not the most important thing about a good portrait. Some of the greatest portrait artists that have ever lived have very little detail in their work, yet they are excellent portraits. Some of my best portraits, I think, are good because I got the shading and the values right. Remember Scully? That was back in 2007, and it has the least amount of detail. In fact, the details are quite bad, but when you look at it, it's a great portrait that actually captures her, not just her likeness, but the mood, the atmosphere of the picture. And number 3, learning and understanding the proportions and shape of a face is where my focus has to be. Next to the values of light and dark, this is, in my opinion, what makes a great portrait. So take Frankenstein's monster again, for example, one of my best. It's all just a bunch of shapes of shadows and highlights that make up his face. The light is actually very dramatic, coming from above his head, which really accentuates the shapes of his face. And I think that is what makes this one so good. Then I guess as a bonus, number 4, nearly every artist says it at the end of their best way to draw a video, but just do what feels right to you. It sounds kind of whatever advice, but with everyone having their own way of doing things and everyone talking about this technique, that technique, it really just comes down to what you're comfortable with. I found myself, even though I'm trying to learn these new techniques, or not new, but just learn some of these techniques, I'm still doing things the way I did them 15 years ago. So I kind of have my own way of doing it because that's what feels right to me, but I'm still incorporating some of the things that I've learned along the way to get better at the things that my weaknesses. So really, there is no right or wrong way. It doesn't matter how you do it, so long as you understand the relationship between light and how it falls over the shapes of the face. The rest is really up to you on how you capture it on the paper. It's the end result that matters. So as I dive back into my practice, my focus is more about understanding the light, shapes, proportions, and capturing the likeness rather than creating a photorealistic drawing. I mean, personally, I like portraits or drawings or paintings that look like they've been drawn or painted. I'm not a huge fan of drawings that are super hyper realistic, that they look like a photograph. This is just my opinion and personal preference. And of course, being able to do that is an amazing talent that I don't believe I could ever achieve. I've been trying to mimic some of the techniques I've learned, and one of them was standing up, holding my charcoal at an arm's length and focusing more on quick, smooth strokes on the paper, but that didn't really feel right at all, and this is what I came up with. Maybe with more practice I'd get better, and it was also my first time drawing a portrait in 9 years, and it was a new technique, so I do have to cut myself some slack. But I just went back to sitting at my desk that I just bought, so I've been wanting to use it, and printing out the portrait in black and white as I've always done, and then just drawing next to it. But for the moment, I'm using a proportional divider to kind of copy the scale of the picture to the blank paper, and that's helped quite a bit, just getting the proportions right, but I'm still getting them wrong, and I still have a lot of work to do. I'm only on my 4th drawing in my new, whatever you want to call it, into portrait drawing, but the one you're watching me do right now is my 4th, and I've kind of gone back to just doing what I was doing years ago, but with a new eye for value proportions and, you know, using charcoal as opposed to the pencils, and using these little paper stubs to smudge the charcoal. This tool has been great, but I don't want to become too reliant on it. You know, I want to be able to do this from life after all, you know, without the black and white picture or this tool. But for now, it is great to kind of help train my hand and my eye to see and draw these proportions correctly. So I do recommend it if you just can't seem to get the proportions right. These are a few of the ones that I've done recently using this tool. The first one is just some random picture from a Unsplash. The second is Shawn Mendes, which I think is a great drawing, but didn't really capture his likeness. It looks kind of more like it could be his brother or something. And then the last one there is Harry Styles, which is not a complete drawing. I was more trying to just capture his likeness, which I nearly got right. Better than the previous ones anyway. And in this video, if you didn't notice already, this is Eddie Redmayne that I've been drawing, and it's close, but it's not quite there yet. Anyway, if you're still listening to me ramble on about drawing, thank you for sticking with me till the end, and if you're watching this because you want to draw better and keep watching video after video about drawing, make this the last one you watch and just go draw instead. You know, watching videos, this is something that I've learned this last couple of weeks, watching videos won't make you better at drawing. Drawing will make you better at drawing. Oh, and if you noticed my shirt, yes, I have put some of my drawings on shirts, so you can check them out over at my website, blairmueller.com. Just go to the horror market and you will find all of the drawings that I've turned into shirts. But anyway, that is it for today, so thank you again, and until next time.